California, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Shapley, for being here. I understand you see it as your duty to have the strict enforcement of tax laws. Is it true that you have often disagreed with charging decisions before?
I have agreed with charging decisions before.
I'm saying, is it true that you have often disagreed? Your recommendations have often been disregarded before when it comes to charging decisions. Is that true?
I don't think disregarded is an accurate representation.
They have been, people in your own IRS have disagreed with your decisions often before. Is that accurate?
That's not accurate.
Is it not true that the tax counsel in the criminal department has disagreed often with your decisions in the past?
Oh, criminal tax attorneys?
Yes.
And, you know, as I stated in my...
So how often have they disagreed, in your opinion, with your recommendation decisions?
Very often, criminal tax attorneys, yes.
Can you give us a percentage of how often you've said we ought to charge someone and they've said no, that may not be a good idea?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just ballparking a vast majority of what we do, and that's why they're advisory. And
do you have respect for them?
And they're advisory.
Do you have respect for them?
Most prosecutors
It's a simple question, sir. Do you respect those colleagues or not?
Often their opinion is not respected by me
Do you respect
and prosecutors.
Them? So do you have more respect for them or Mr. Weiss?
I don't...
I just think because you have a history of wanting to charge people and then people pushing back. By your own testimony under oath, you said about 90% of the time people are pushing back on what you want to do. And I'm not questioning. I mean, you are a stickler for the law. You know, it reminds me of Les Mis, and you know the famous person wanted to get the person who had a sandwich. I mean, and then all those times you've got people pushing back on you, and you say, well, they're not very well respected.
Yeah, well,
I mean, do you respect Mr. Weiss?
So the criminal tax attorneys, you know, I've never had a case that they declined, that they did not concur with, that we didn't ignore their request and move forward with the
But at 90% they have disagreed with you, correct? By your own testimony.
Yeah, yes, I established that, but they're
And
advisory.
let me just ask you on the media, you've given testimony under oath that you have never spoken to the Washington Post, any report on this matter, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know, have you spoken to any media outlet on this matter?
I have spoken after the House Ways and Means Committee.
Before that, have you spoken to any media journalist on this matter?
Absolutely not.
Do you know of any colleague of yours at the IRS who has spoken to any journalist on this matter?
Absolutely not.
Do you know of any investigation into the leaks on this matter?
So the October 6th leak, I was the person who referred it to our Inspector General.
Do you know any of your colleagues who are under
December 9th of 2020, around the day of action?
Do you know if any of your colleagues are under investigation?
IRS Inspector General and
Sorry, if I could just finish. Do you know if any of your colleagues are under investigation for that leak?
No, I know of no colleague under investigation for that leak.
And just for the record, then it is your testimony under oath that you have never spoken to any media person before the House testimony about this matter.
It's not only my testimony under oath today. I provided an affidavit to House Ways and Means Committee stating the same. I've said it to our Inspector General's office as well.
I appreciate that. I just want to make a final point on this. I mean, one, I think what...
Mr. Chairman, could we mind if I...
Yeah, can the gentleman answer the question you asked, Mr. Kahnna?
I just don't want my time to be affected.
If you're granting him the time, Mr. Chairman, but that's
you
unusual.
Give me, I want a minute to wrap up. If you want to give him
Okay, you have a minute.
Okay. Here's the point. I think this whole thing, our ranking member Raskin summarized this. I don't disrespect you, sir. I think you have a tough view on what you think the law should be. And this is why we have a prosecutorial system where you don't get to decide, I don't get to decide. We have a whole system. And it turns out that often your recommendations on who should be charged differ from some of the other folks. And that's what's happened in this case. And as your testimony here, you yourself said, you think Mr. Weiss should come and explain his decision. You don't question him. And I think on the optics issue that some of my colleagues have brought up, I mean, obviously, Attorney General Barr is going to be concerned with the optics when you have a Donald Trump-appointed U.S. attorney potentially bringing charges against his rival's son. That's a real legitimate thing to do. So I guess my view here is we're spending hours on a disagreement about whether to charge someone. We have a whole democratic process that does that. You don't get to my final question, Mr. Shapley, do you think you should decide who gets charged, or do you think that should be the charging officer?
So each time you say this is a disagreement, you can say it multiple times. It doesn't make it true. We've testified under oath here about the prosecutors agreeing with charging felony charges on multiple occasions. And, just to say this is a disagreement would be a misrepresentation.
My last question, though, who do you think gets to, do you think you should have that final decision, or a prosecutor should have the final decision?
No, I am a special agent for IRS criminal investigation. I do not make the final decision on whether to charge or not.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
In terms of our criminal tax...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, just are we instituting a new rule in the committee? Because
Well,
I've never seen this happen before.
Okay. I didn't know if it was to answer, Mr. Are you finished?
Someone else can follow
Okay.
up. I've
All right.
seen someone
Okay.
could say,
Yeah,
give them the
you're
next-
correct, rules.
Yep.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes